Welcome to Words Unwritten, where we talk about how to create a greater impact in the world and your work through thoughtful communication and rebellious mindset. I'm your host, Nino, writer, poet, copywriter, ghostwriter, and owner of the Writers Rebellion. For this episode of Words Unwritten, I'm talking about approaching your work like an artist. This is especially powerful for entrepreneurs because entrepreneurs are just artists in suits, or in my case, sweatpants, or yoga pants, or anything that's comfortable. When we shift our mindset towards one that is more like a rebellious artist, we can truly create work that is tailored to us and what we want to contribute into the world instead of just falling in line. Whether you're an entrepreneur trying to discover how to communicate with your customers better or a writer wanting to impact the world for the good, there's something here for you. So, to all the artists, entrepreneurs, rebel writers, and changemakers, let's get into it. Okay, so I like to use entrepreneur as an example because I think it's really easy for us to embody this creative energy whenever we're an artist, right? Whatever type of artist you are, whether you're an artist who paints or draws or whatever, it's so much easier to channel this creative or identify as a creative whenever you are in what society deems as somebody who is an artist, who is creative, whether you're a painter, a drawer, or whatever. That's easy to contextualize, right? But when you're an entrepreneur, a lot of times we don't think of ourselves as artists, and we have a greater tendency to try and fall into the societal norms of what we have been taught that we have to be, and that we have to work from 9 to 5, that we have to do something that's more structured or within the bounds of a socially acceptable kind of career and things like that. And whenever we're doing that, we're really not living within our highest vibe. I know these are a lot of like spiritually terms, but these are the best ways that I can explain what it feels like. And whenever you are building your business, or if you even have like a large standing at a company, whether you're a CMO or you're a CEO or whatever, and you're moving from a place of creation, you're able to reimagine things. You're able to innovate greater within your company. And so entrepreneurs, like I said in the intro, are just artists in suits. And so we're creating something. So if we just bring it back to creation itself, creation is taking something from a concept, from an idea or a thought, and bringing it into the physical world. So with that definition, we can really see how an entrepreneur is a creative, just like an artist who has an idea for a painting and brings it into the real world is a creative, right? So when you're embodying this thing, you have to think deeper, right? You have to bring it more into what your heart is calling for, what your heart wants, instead of doing what your mind thinks you should. And that is the big thing, I think, between artists and your average worker bee, because artists are creating from their heart. They're creating from their soul. It's something that they feel called to do. And oftentimes in our work, we don't do what we feel called to do. We do what we feel like we should do, right? And that's not really acting in our highest vibe, right? Or our highest, like, have you ever had a moment when you're working in something, when you're in the flow, time disappears and you just like, I always feel like I'm buzzing in underneath my skin, or like that you start feeling that glowy sensation. You're talking about something you're passionate about. Maybe, you're on a current hyperfixation and you're really into talking about this one thing that you're really hyperfixated on, and you're just like, oh my god, I just learned this thing and it's so amazing. And you feel that sense of like glowing, like you're beaming. You can see, people can see it from you, right? So that's you speaking and from your heart, right? And a lot of entrepreneurs start on this journey, right? And they start by saying, I'm really passionate about this. I'm really good at this. And I'm tired of living in line. And I'm going to create something that's more tailored to me and more aligned with the purpose that I feel right now. And so that's when they're starting to embody this artist mentality, right? And then they start getting into the nitty gritty. And so many entrepreneurs I know get stuck in this like, okay, well, I have to work from 9 to 5 because this is my job now. I'm an entrepreneur. I have to work from this time to this time. Or they say, that they have to do this one certain type of thing. Like, for example, I've been a copywriter for many years, and initially in my copywriting, it felt like I knew health and wellness really well, right? I was a PTA for a long time. I was a health coach for a while. Like, I knew health and wellness well. And so I worked in health and wellness because this is what I was familiar with. I was starting to break free from being within healthcare, being in this trap that I felt confined in, I felt trapped in, I felt miserable in. I was not in my highest vibe. It was actually a detriment to my mental health, right? And then I started in my entrepreneur journey. And I went initially to what I knew. I knew health and wellness, but then working with certain companies that I felt were really perpetuating diet culture. And as somebody who recovered from an eating disorder and can identify the harm and knows firsthand the harm of diet culture, I was not having that. And so I was really trying to enforce, like, okay, can we use different languaging and stuff like that? But I was still acting in what I knew, what was familiar, because sometimes what feels familiar is uncomfy. We know it's uncomfy, but it's familiar. It's easier to deal with the familiar thing that you're uncomfy with than it is to explore something new, because what if something different, something new is more uncomfy? At least you know this discomfort and you know how to manage this discomfort, right? And so we tend to not really dive full into what feels aligned with us, right? Taking that aligned action, as my friend Khalil says all the time. And so taking that aligned action for me was claiming, I don't do diet culture. I will not use diet culture language. I will not use shame in my copywriting. And that was the beginning of this like anti-shame crusade, this rebellious copywriting, or this conscious copywriting that I do right now. And it was because I was starting to break free, and then I was going into a comfortable discomfort, and not ready to fully embody what I was being called to do, right? And so as the journey progresses, we evolve, we do all these different things, right? But when we first start that entrepreneur journey, we're embodying that artist mentality of breaking free, but then we still fall within what we know. And so in my entrepreneur journey, it's all about continuing to bring the artist into the game. So for you, what does it look like to bring the artist into the room. One of my other dear friends, Lex Smith, and loving client, one of my other friends, Lex Smith, talks about who's in the driver's seat in our minds. And if you want to listen to our podcast, it's called The Spiritual University, and you can find it everywhere else. I'll link it. Oh, and I'll also link Khalil's podcast because it's phenomenal. So you have to check that one out too. It's Unstuck with the KD at the end. I'll link that. Any hoozle. So Lex talks about who's in the driver's seat of our minds, right? And that instead of it just being one person in your head or just you making the decision, if we think about these different hats that we wear as archetypes, how do those different archetypes fit within our decision-making car? And so for me, I have the entrepreneur in the car. I have the artist in the car. I have the mom in the car, and I have the activist in the car. And so those are my four selves. That was four selves in the car, and we're all determining the destination together. And this helps me to create a balance, right? I have the entrepreneur, which is the business that I'm creating because I do not want to work a normal 9-to-5 job that doesn't align with me. Works for lots of people, and I'm so happy for them, but it is not mine, not my quest. And so but then creativity is so important to me, and it's so vital for me as somebody who lives very much in their head, that I have that creativity, because creativity brings me into my heart. It brings me into my body and helps to ground me, and also helps me to find that magic in the world, which the activist in me sometimes struggles with, because I see, as the activist me sees all the things that are so harmful in the world and that need to change. And then the mom in me just like wants to build the system, wants to build the foundations that will make the world better for her kid, and that wants to just love and nurture and just like heal, right? And so together, the four of me comes and moves in the direction that feels the most aligned for all four. And sometimes the artist needs to take the driver's seat. That was actually a huge component in what turned Littlewood Copy into the Writers' Rebellion. The artist was like, hey, I'm not involved enough. I need more. And the activist was also like, yeah, we could be doing more too. Like, hello. And so sometimes like things need to switch up and stuff like that. And so, who's in your driver's seat? How do you have your artist even in your car? Is your artist even involved? Maybe it's time to bring your artist involved. Maybe it's time to let your artist take over your journey a bit, because I feel like art is where the magic happens. A lot of times when you bring that vision, or you bring that mentality of creating something that does not currently exist, whether that is something that's coming through your business, or just writing work in general, or just like as your like daily work in general and stuff, like where can you bring that visionary energy into your stuff? So I'm going to leave you with that, and how and I want you to think about like where this is for you, and how you can start embodying this artist mindset more in your work. And also think about like who's in your car. Like maybe drop a comment and tell me like who's in your car, like who are your four big players, or maybe you have a bus and you have a lot more. As a Gemini, I totally understand that. So like drop a comment, let me know who's in your car and what things you're feeling drawn to, because you have to honor what you're drawn to. And you can do that. Like if you're working that 9 to 5 and you're feeling called to have a coaching business or whatever, like if you're feeling called to write that book, fucking write that book, man. Like make that business. Like if you're feeling called to it, like we spend 1/3 of our lives working. And let's be honest, the working environment is not fun. It's not giving, you know? So why spend 1/3 of your life miserable? And then you spend 1/3 of your life sleeping. So that's 1/3 of your life that you're able to do all of the other things, like fit all of the other things in it. And like, yes, we all have to survive. And it's been a struggle bus, thing lately with finances and surviving and like inflation and all of the things. Like, but what is something that you can do that's going to, girl, my cat. It's been hard lately. And we need to work to pay our bills. We need to work to buy our food. Like, obviously, these are important. And I'm not saying just like abandon ship and just go, full on in unless you financially have the capabilities to do so. And I know that that is not always approachable for everybody. But what is something that you can do to start living in more alignment, to start having that more artist mindset in your life, to make that 1/3 of your life happy, joyful, filled with purpose and fulfillment? This is so important. And you're worth that. You're worth that feeling of this life is worth radiating for, that you can be so fucking pumped about it. There's no reason you shouldn't have it. There's no reason why that business or that book or that poem or that painting or that job shouldn't be yours if it's calling to you. Oh my God, my cat is so distracting. Yes, my dear, I love you. Go away. So with that, I leave you with this episode of Words Unwritten. What is your mindset? How can you bring an artist mindset to the table, into the driver's seat of the car, and communicate in a higher creative form, and create the impact in the world that you feel called to create? Thank you so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, follow, review, do all the things. Your support is life-giving. Most importantly, remember that words are powerful, so go out there and make some magic and let's start a rebellion.